Hello, everybody. It's me. My dad was the greatest man I knew, even if he did have a few quirks. For instance, he always called me by my sister's name. Now, that never made any sense to me, but sometimes his mind would just wander to places unknown. But one thing that my father always cherished more than anything else was our family home, or what he liked to call it, the old mill. The house wasn't really that old, but my dad grew up in it, so he had many memories there. In fact, I think he liked the house because it reminded him of simpler times. The problem is that those simpler times were also filled with much sadness. He would often tell us stories about how, when he was young, he would hear strange sounds coming from the basement in the middle of the night, like chains dragging metal moans. But every time he went down there, he found nothing. I suppose that's why one day he decided to finally take care of the issue once and for all. As he told me this story, I noticed that his face got darker and darker, as if the memory itself was bringing him pain. So I asked him if everything was okay. At first he didn't answer, but then he took a deep breath and said, "Your grandfather boarded up that basement door, but he never actually finished the job. Sometimes the boards would come loose and I would hear those noises again. I remember that one time he left those chains down there. He wanted to see what would happen." I felt chills go down my spine because at that point I had only ever seen the basement door boarded up and locked. No one in the house had ever gone down there, not even Mom. But as I listened to my dad's story, I could feel that this place held many secrets. And as he continued talking, I learned that the reason why he liked our house so much was because it represented his entire life. He was born in that house and lived there for 42 years. He married my mother there. He started his business there. He had his ups and downs, his good times and his bad times. All of them happened there. That's why it was so important to him. And I believe it was the reason why he loved me. He saw me as a part of that house. You know, a new addition to the family tree, if you will. In a way, I guess I was supposed to carry on his legacy and keep the memories alive. But sadly, he never got to see that happen. He died of a heart attack when I was 17. I still remember that day like it was yesterday. I was going to my room when I heard my mom scream my dad's name. Then she came running out of her and Dad's bedroom with tears streaming down her face. She kept saying, "He's gone, he's gone." But I didn't understand what she meant until I went into the bedroom and saw my dad lying on the bed completely still. His eyes were open and staring blankly ahead. And that image has stuck with me ever since. After his funeral, my mom and I stayed in that house for a while. But the longer we stayed there, the harder it was to live with all of his memories surrounding us. So we eventually sold the house and moved away. To this day, I still regret that decision. I wish I had the house back. I wish I could have kept it in the family. But most of all, I wish I could have fixed my dad's last regret. You see, before he died, he had already planned out the renovations he wanted done to the house. He wanted to fix up the attic and turn it into my bedroom. He wanted to turn the basement into a workshop where he could work on his projects. And he wanted to fix the front yard so I could have a place to play basketball. But unfortunately, none of that ever happened. And as I got older, I promised myself that if I ever got the chance, I would finish what he started. And get this. A few weeks ago, I found an old box filled with all of his tools. There were screwdrivers, wrenches, drills, saws, the whole 9 yards. But what really caught my eye was this one tool in particular. It was a massive silver hook with a thick chain attached to it. It almost looked like something you would use to, I don't know, hang meat in a butcher shop or something like that. And when I picked it up, I noticed that the chain was bent at a weird angle, like someone had tried to break it. That's when I remembered what my dad told me about the basement. Those chains, the ones that made the noise, they were down there. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but now it seemed like fate was giving me a sign. I needed to go to that basement. I needed to find those chains. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'd even find some money down there. I could use the cash to renovate the house and finally fulfill my promise to my dad. but I had no idea what I was getting myself into. So here's what happened. After finding that box, I went straight to the basement. I opened the door and descended the stairs. It was dark and musty, just like you would expect a basement to be. The only light came from the grimy window at the far end of the room. And as I walked through the darkness, I could feel a cold breeze on the back of my neck. It was like someone was watching me. Finally, I spotted what looked like a blanket covering something near the wall. So I walked over and pulled it off. And underneath was a wooden chest, one that I had never seen before. I don't know why, but I felt drawn to it. It was almost like an invisible force was pulling me closer and closer until finally my fingers brushed against its surface. And that's when I heard it, a low, guttural growl that seemed to come from the walls themselves. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but then it happened again. Growl. This time it sounded louder, more intense, and suddenly I realized that I wasn't alone in that basement. Whatever was hiding in that chest was alive, and it was angry. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I stumbled backward, knocking over a rusty can. It clanged to the floor, amplifying the deafening silence that followed. Then it struck. A heavy thud resonated through the basement, shaking the very foundation of the house. The wooden chest had moved. Its contents were shifting. With a pounding heart, I turned and sprinted toward the stairs, desperate to escape the unseen terror lurking in the darkness behind me. Each step I climbed brought me closer to safety, or so I thought. As I reached the top of the stairs, I could hear its heavy breathing echoing behind me, each breath hot and stinking like rotting meat. Then I saw it, emerging from the gloom, dragging itself closer and closer. Its eyes, two glowing embers in the darkness, stared directly at me, promising pain and torment. Instinctively, I ran. I ran as fast as my legs could carry me, the image of its malevolent grin seared into my memory. I burst through the back door, slamming it shut and locking it frantically. But my respite was short-lived. A blood-curdling roar tore through the air, shaking the very walls of the house. The monster was outside, pacing back and forth, its anger echoing in its heavy footsteps. I stood frozen, paralyzed by fear as the tremors from its movements shook the house. Then, as abruptly as it began, it stopped. Heavy footsteps faded into an eerie silence. Was it gone? Had it given up? Or was it just waiting, planning its next move? My heart pounded against my ribs, threatening to burst from my chest. My breaths came in shallow gasps, each one a testament to the terror that gripped me. In that moment, I knew I couldn't stay in the house. I had to get out, to put as much distance between myself and that basement as possible. But where could I go? Who could I turn to for help? With trembling hands, I dialed 911, my voice shaking as I explained what had happened. But their response was less than helpful. They said that there had been a lot of prank calls lately, and that they would send someone over to check it out. But I knew this was no prank. I knew that what I had encountered was real. As I waited for the police to arrive, I tried to calm myself, to convince myself that everything was going to be all right. But deep down, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The world that I had known, the life that I had taken for granted, all of it had been shattered by what I had found in my dad's old basement. And as the minutes ticked by, I couldn't help but wonder what other secrets, what other horrors my dad had stumbled upon during his lifetime. What other things had he found down in that basement? And why had he never told me before? Questions that would have to wait for another day because right now I had a new problem to deal with. The police had arrived, and they weren't buying my story.